Hello everybody, welcome to Slackbite. How are you all? In our last video, we have made some starter setup. We have installed eslint, prettier and typescript. So in this video, we'll move to the next steps. Here we'll install Mongoose, Helmet, Express, a logger, and we'll do a server setup. So let's start. We'll do npm install Express for our routing and server purpose. Mongoose as an ORM for MongoDB, helmet to return only those headers which are only needed, no extra headers in the response, Morgan for HTTP logger, Pino for logging, our app logging. So the installations are now finished. As we have discussed in our last video that we will host this application on Lambda, but we need it to be running in our local also, right, for our local development. So we'll have two entry points, one for Lambda and one for our local development. So I'll create two files. One entry point is for our local development, so I'll name it server.ts, and one entry point will be for the Lambda, so I'll name it lambda.ts. In server.ts we'll call the app, the Express app. We'll create an app.ts, and here we will import Express. From Express we'll install, or we'll import helmet. From helmet we'll import Morgan. From Morgan, and I think that's it for now. We'll say const app equal to Express, and then first thing that we do is to do a use of helmet. So as soon as our app start, helmet should be in use, so that we'll only return those headers which so when you create an backend in Node.js by using Express when in response also includes some headers which tell that okay, the backend is running using Express, but we need not to share those headers with the users, right? Or I mean, we need not to send them back. Sending least information or only those information which is required. We should follow this protocol, helmet, and then after that we'll do app.use for body parser. Body parser is now a part of Express. It was removed then included again, so we'll use express.json, and then we'll use but before that we'll use app.use Morgan, and in Morgan we'll give tiny for our logging. Okay, we are getting some error from Express. What is that? Okay, we need to include the types of Express also, as we are using TypeScript. I can do it by simply clicking on this quick fix, and my Vscode will install it for me, but just for the sake of this video I will install it manually. -save dev or -d as a dev dependencies. We don't need these types in production, as we will be running our production app using the distributor or the dist folder. I think Morgan is giving us the same error, so let's copy it and install it. It will take a while. It's installed now. There should not be any error. Okay, now everything is fine. What we'll do, we'll just do a export default app. Before importing it in the server.ts and do a app.listen and starting a server, I want to create a logger. So for that we have installed Pino, right? So let's go to Pino's documentation, and I think it's the best way to use any library, first to check its documentation. So Pino npm, we'll see the npm package, and whatever the links, the document link mentioned over there, we'll use that. Okay, this is the home page, and I am interested in their API, how to use it. Okay, so a logger is basically needed for production applications, because a logger cannot only log at different log levels. By log levels, if you don't know what are log levels, will discuss about it also in this video, so stay tuned. But you'll need a logger in real world production applications, because it can transfer those logs to external vendors, for example Datadog or CloudWatch, or you can use your own ELK stack, Elasticsearch, Logstash, Kibana. So for that your Logstash will be reading the logs from a file. So for that you need to put your logs into a file, and now the file size should not be large, so you should have your, your logger should be smart enough to rotate that file based on certain conditions. For example, if this many days have passed, by rotating a file, create a new file. Do not put everything in a single file like a big chunk, or dump everything in a file so that the file will become so large. Or rotate the file after certain days, or rotate a file after once this much bytes of this much, or this much size of the file is reached. So this kind of smart logging options these loggers provide you. It also gives you option to log your logs at different logging level. So fatal, error, warn, info, debug, trace, and silent. So generally what we do when you configure a logger, you put your logging level. So if your logging level is for example warning, so it will show you only fatal and error and warning logs on the output. It will not show you the info and debug one. So what we generally do in production is when the app is quite stable and it's running fine, no issues, no bugs, so we switch the log level from maybe debug or info to error. So we'll only get fatal and error in the output. It will save the cost, obviously, compute, storage, and yeah, the cost is the main factor. But if in case there is any issue in production, so what we do, the first thing we do is to enable the logging, more debug or more extensive logging. So we most of the time we switch on or we increase the logging level to debug. So now we'll be getting debug, info, warn, error, and fatal logs in the output. So it totally depends on us, and we need to be smart enough to put the log at a place where it will help us during issues. Okay, so we need to decide whether this log I want to be as an info or to be as an error. Too much of talking, let's go back to our server, our Vscode, and we'll create a utils folder. Inside the utils folder, I'll create a logger.ts, and in the logger.ts, I'll import Pino. And again, Pino is showing us some error. It is because of eslint, I think so. Yeah, it is not used, that's why. So we'll use it. Const logger equal to Pino, and then so the usage is simply defined here. You can use it like this. So in the options is level or levels, to see level. So level will be, for now we'll put it as debug. Okay, this debug. We can take it from the environment variable. We'll take it from environment variable. So let's quickly configure the environment variable also. So for that, we'll install .env, npm install .env package, one more package. It will take a while to get installed. So .env will read your .env file, which you should not push to Git repository because it contains your secret. So that's why we'll call it a .env file. It's hidden file. So .env here, and it should be grayed out for you because the git ignore will be ignoring it. This git ignore file will be ignoring it during the git commits and push. So we'll put Pino level as debug in our case, and once we push it to production, we'll change this environment variable to maybe error. Okay, so if you put it as debug, I'll get fatal, error, warn, info, debug in the output, but I won't get trace or silent in the output. Okay, debug, and then I'll also put port, on which port I want to start my server. So I want to start it on 8081. I'll import it here. So .env should be the first thing, or should be imported in your application as soon as the app start, and you need not to import it every time you want to use any environment variable. As soon as the app starts, you import it. So what .env will do, .env will put your environment variables, whatever you have put in your .env file, into a process.env object, and then you can use those variables from process.env object. Okay, so it's not needed every time when you are using process.env environment variable in a file, you will import .env. No, it's not needed. You just import it once, but the crux is you import it as soon as your app starts. Okay, so that's what we do. .env-config. I think we need to put it in quotes and we'll be good. Okay, so we'll go here, and what we'll do process.env dot, what was our variable, Pino level, and we'll export it, export default logger. Okay, so our logger is done. Now we'll go to server.ts and we'll import app. we'll import a logger also from our logger that we have just created. And now here we create a function start server. Okay, so this function will take 2 arguments, but for now we'll only configuring 1 argument, that is port, which is in number, or maybe for now string, because dot environment variables will be in string format. We'll parse into in a number before giving it to app dot listen function to start the server. And second argument will be, once we configure Mongo, we'll give the Mongo URI or Mongo connection string to this start server, and we'll connect to Mongo as soon as the app starts. Okay, so for now let's say only port we are using, and now here we'll put a try catch just to catch any error. And now here we'll do app.listen, and app.listen needs a callback function, and before that it needs a port. So port will be, before that we'll change the port to server port equal to parse port, and we'll give this server port to app.listen. And once it is up, we'll do logger.info. In this case we'll do log info. So our current logging level is debug, so it will log the info for us. Okay, info server. So what we will do, we'll follow this pattern from local, and once we host it on Lambda, we'll say from Lambda started successfully on port. I'm using template literal, so server port. Okay, and in case of any error, I'll cache the error here. I'll use err and say logger.fatal. Okay, this is a fatal error for us. Something bad happened while starting the process, or sorry, the server. Not able to, and we'll do a process.exit here, exit of 1, just for our reference. And now we'll call this function start server with a port. Now we need a port here, right? So we need to go to environment variable. Now here we need not to include the .env again, because as soon as we, so this is the entry point for our local run, right? Server start servers. So we'll ask Node.js to start everything from this file server.ts. So what it will do, the first thing server.ts will do is to import the app. It will go to app, and now app is importing .env for us, so we need not to import it here again. We can simply do port equal to process.env dot port, and so we have named it port. We can use it here. Now what is the error? Argument of type string undefined is not assignable. Okay, so this environment variable can be undefined also, but we can use a hack here. Not a hack, because we know the port can never be empty. If it is empty, then we'll be in trouble. So 2 things we can do: either we can use a nullish coalescing operator and say if the port is not present, then go with 3000. But I don't want to show anything on the code like this is the default port or some hard codings. So what I'll do, I'll almost try to not to have this port environment variable undefined. So I will tell TypeScript that I know this variable will never be undefined, it will always be defined by this exclamation here at the end. Okay, so this port will be of type string. Here is string, so string will go to here is string, and string will get converted to a number, because app.listens needs a port which is on number. It will take the server port number in string also, but we'll prefer the standards. So in our routes folder, so this index.ts we don't need now. I think we have used it for our testing of TypeScript and eslint. So what we'll do, just like utils, we create one more folder, routes. Okay, and in the routes we'll create a index.ts, and based on different routes we'll create different routes. Index.ts will have a health check route. So once this slash health check will be called, server will respond that whether I'm healthy or not. So first we'll need to import express const router equal to express dot router, and now we say router dot get so health check. Then the function will receive 2 arguments, request and response. Request and the response, so for that we'll also include its types from Express, saying response request, and that's it, I think so. So response will be of type response and request will be of type request. Okay, now we'll say response dot send hello from Mockingo backend, I am alive. Okay, I think we are good here. Now the last thing that I always forget is to export this router, otherwise our things will not work. And we'll import this router in our app.ts. Now slowly we'll start importing different routes. Import index router, we'll name it index router. So when you export your exports by using the default keyword, just the way we did here, you need not to use the exact name when you are importing it. Okay, so this index router will route you to the same export. I'll show it to you. /routes/index. Okay, so once you click it here, you will come here also. Okay, directly. So this is applicable in case of when you export it as a default. Here app.use will start every route with version 1. Okay, and then index router. So whenever a request for /v1/health checks come, it will go to, I mean, whenever there is a request by /v1/ then it will go to index router. Okay, if now if let's say we have one more router, say user router. So if the request comes like /v1/user, it will first go to index router. Now in index router there is no route for /user, so it will come down to the user router and it will find out there. So if there is no routes, we'll handle that also, that if no routes present by whatever user has requested, if there is no router for that, we'll say 404, something like this. Okay, and that reminds me one more thing, that Express gives you a default error handler. So whenever there is any unseen error which we never thought of and we didn't try to caught it in the try catch block, so Express catches it, and there is a default error handler for Express, I mean provided by Express. So we can use that error handler to catch any error that Express throws while routing, if there is any error happens. So it is good to have, and one should always use, I think so. So how the pattern goes is, you need to use the error first. Now it should be good. Now if there is no error from the Express error handler, we'll just say go to the next function. Okay, cool. So this is efficient catching of the error by using Express error handler, and this need to be, and I think I prefer, and I think you guys should also prefer, to put it at the end of all your routings. We'll have more routings here, just like index router. So you put it at the end, so it will catch any error that is happened during the routing in your application. And I think we are good. Our error handler is set up, our logger is set up here, ES is set up. So now let's start our server. So before that we need to tell the same thing to package.json, that you need to start the dev using server.js, not. So TypeScript will compile that server.ts to server.js, right? Let's do it now. npm run dev. So first it will remove the distributed folder, compile it, it will again gets created, and we should have our server running. It should execute this start server. If you saw the same warning or same information from your Windows, just click on allow. Okay, that's a firewall information. So I think our server has started successfully, and this is the log that is getting printed. Just to kill the server, I see Control-C, and that reminds me of one more thing. When I press Control-C, I'll discuss it, but before that, if I put the log level as fatal, and now if I start the server, so here while starting the server I am using info, but as per the documentation, fatal comes at the last. So when you use fatal, then info, error or warning will not come in the output, so it should not come. So when we start the server, we should not see any logger.info. Yes, I think so, there is no logger.info, and our server is in the listening mode. So this is what I was referring to when I said you should use log levels as per your requirement. So here I'll use debug again. I'll change it to debug. I'll start the server again. Now we should see some error, some logger. Okay, now the server has started. Let me go to my Chrome and hit it. Health check. Health check is also not defined because we have to use v1 here. Hello from Mockingo backend, I am alive. So this is working as expected, and this is coming from Morgan, and this is coming from Pino. Now I wanted to show you how this error handler works. So let me stop the server, and in the index.ts I'll throw one error. I'm not catching it, I just throw it, throwing error from, so intentional error. Okay, now we are not catching it anywhere, okay, but Express will catch it for us, and we'll put this into this default error handler. I'll run the server again. It has started. Now let's try to run it. Now I should get some error here. Error from Express handler. Error is this intentional error, and this is coming from this log. Okay, now what I'll do, is it running in continuous mode, because I haven't sent any response till now. So what I'll do response dot redirect for now /v1 /health check, because that's the only route that we have right now active. Okay, so we can create one more route. Let's create one more route here, saying router dot get, that's the /1. okay, request, I'll copy it from here, and welcome to Mockingo, and here we'll redirect it to our home page. We need to put v1 here. Okay, that is the home page, because everything is going via v1. Let me stop the server, we'll run it. Okay, let's hit the v1 /health check. It will throw an error which is not caught, so it should come to the error handler, and it will reroute us to the home page by giving an error in our log, saying there is some error from the Express error handler. So this is handled quite efficiently, right, sensibly. If I remove this, if I comment this one, the default error handler of Express, now you see what comes to the output. Okay, server has started. I think, yeah, it has started. Now let me go to health check again. See, this is not a logical thing that you should return to your users. What is there in your application, your folder structure, right? So this is not sensible. So you should use, I think everyone should use Express error handler in their code. And before stopping the video, I wanted to tell you one more thing. As soon as we press Ctrl+C, it gives an instruction to your system or to your operating system that you kill this process which is running on the listening mode. So we in our next video we'll connect to Mongo database. Okay, so as soon as we start the application here, we'll connect to Mongo, and then we'll use those pool of connection, or maybe that connection that we create to query the data. When we press Ctrl+C here, the process gets killed, but you have to inform Mongo also that I'm not using that connection anymore. Now close that connection from your pool of connection, or from your system, wherever you are keeping track of the number of connections active. You should kill that or remove that TCP connection also, because I'm not using it. So for that you need to tell it to Mongo that I'm not using your connection now, kill it. So before pressing Ctrl+C, or maybe once you press Ctrl+C, making an immediate exit, before making an immediate exit, you should catch that Ctrl+C also, or sig term or sig kill signal also, and then do a mongo.disconnect. You should free that connection from Mongo database, and then do a good exit. See, when we do hobby projects, we generally don't follow these things, and because there is not much of the load on our application, it's not a production application. But when we generally code production application, we take care of these things also majorly, because I remember in one of my previous assignments we were not closing the connections efficiently, and we were not telling to Oracle database that you should kill it, and it was happening from local itself. So other developers are doing some coding, and after that they will press Control C, and everything starts. I mean, everything was working. They push their code, go back to home, but the connection is still active from Oracle end. Or Oracle, I mean, Oracle or every database keeps information about the open connections, and there is a threshold about for open connections also, right? You cannot have infinite open connections for database. There is a threshold. So once you are near to that threshold of number of connections a database can have, database started becoming slow, or most of the time it gives you error, which really, I mean, frustrates you, because when you want to connect to database will give you that no active connection is available, or some this kind of error. But you know, there is no one else connecting to that database. Why there is no active connection? The reason is you haven't closed your previous connection. So in our next video, what we'll do, we'll catch these errors also. So for these all scenarios we need to consider, and what we'll do after this start server, we'll catch all those scenarios, like process.on as an event, saying process.on SIGTERM, process.on SIGKILL, and before I mean exiting from our application, process.exit, we'll do a mongo.disconnect. We'll do all these things in our next video, but just to tell you guys that as I said in the beginning of the video, that my intention is to make it production ready. That's what I'm trying to do. All good for this video. In the next video, we'll go ahead with the Mongo connections, and we'll write some queries. Okay, thank you.